Good evening. I'm Martha Saunders, President of the League of Women Voters of Carrollton, Carroll County, and I welcome you to the League's Candidate Forum for the City of Carrollton. The purpose of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through the informed participation of citizens in government and to act on selected governmental issues. As policy, the League does not support or oppose any political campaign or candidate and is fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, both in principle and practice. This is our final forum for this particular election cycle. Early voting has already begun, and I know that the citizens are eager to hear what our candidates have to say. So with that understanding, I will turn this over to Moderator Bruce Lyon, who will introduce the League participants, the League assistants and the forum participants. Excuse me. Take it, Bruce.
Thank you, Martha Ann. I will be having the pleasure of moderating this forum this evening. Ordinarily, I would have a co-moderator. My wife, Kathy, joins me on these occasions, but she is on her way back from seeing a person in Peachtree City about a root canal. She would much rather be here than where she's been this afternoon. The League participants tonight include our Vice President, Jennifer Danlicker. Gila, whom you've already met, Gila Gonzalez is our Chief Technician. Our timekeeper this evening will be Barbara Gibson. And the candidates already have received instruction on how she'll be handling her paddles this evening. She'll be warning them at the 15-second point. And then she'll have a stop sign that she'll hold up to indicate that that particular time for that particular question is up. Our candidates are candidates for Ward 2, Carrollton City Council, Dr. Brent Harris and Mr. Brent Ledbetter. And if you all don't mind, we'll just be on a first name basis this evening. We will operate on a 2-2-2 format. That means that the candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statements, 2 minutes to respond to the questions that have been compiled by the League, and then 2 minutes for closing statements at the end of the forum. We expect to wind this up within an hour, if not less, once we are able to get to the questions that members of the League and others have submitted for this evening. So having said all that, unless there are questions about the procedures we're following this evening, we'll begin with the opening statements. Let's begin with Brent Harris first, and then the first person to make the closing statements then at the end of the forum will be Brent Ledbetter. But we'll begin with Brent and turn it over to you at this point, sir.
Well, hello, Carrollton, and thank you for having me on this forum this evening. My name is Dr. Brent Harris. I've been here in Carrollton not quite a decade now. I was born in Rapid City, South Dakota. My father was in the U.S. Air Force and flew B-52 nuclear-capable aircraft during the Cold War. I lived there for a couple of years and then moved to California and then moved to Washington State. Moved into Georgia when I was in the mid 80s. I was approximately 6 years old and grew up in the Peachtree City, Tyrone area, and then studied at Berry College up in Rome, Georgia, and then moved to Macon and started 2 years of medical school there, and then went down to Savannah for an additional 2 years. Met my wife, Dr. Anna Harris, in medical school, and we got married, and then we traveled out to Texas, University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio to finish our residencies. And so we both completed residencies out there in Texas, and then we moved back here. We chose Carrollton because it was a nice location in between both of our families, approximately 45 minutes to either of our extended family, so my parents and her parents. And Tanner Hospital recruited us into excellent opportunities. I joined Professional Park Medical Service at that time with Dr. Taylor Gordon, Dr. Davis, and Greg Floyd. Great group of guys over there and women. And then decided to kind of branch off into my own world of direct pay medical care. Saw there was a big need for affordable health care in Carrollton. And the rest is history. Here I am trying to invest in Carrollton and looking at a political integration into that investment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brett, we'll ask you to unmute, and then if you give your opening statement, please.
Good evening. I'm Brett Ledbetter. I'm your current city councilman for Ward 2. It's been my pleasure to serve with Mayor Kaysen and the other 3 councilmen for the last 2 years. I was elected to fulfill the unexpired term for Rory Wojcik, who left to go to Charleston. And so I'm seeking a 4-year term, a full term this time. And, I've learned a lot over the last couple of years. I've learned that, number one, I don't have all the answers to everything that comes up. But I've also learned a lot of the procedure of getting things done on a local level. And I feel like that education that I've gotten is going to be valuable to me in the coming years if I'm reelected. And I'm married to my wife of 39 years, Celia, and we have 2 children who also both have 2 children. So we've got 4 grandchildren. 2 of them live right across the street from us, which has been great, and we've enjoyed every minute of that. So I'm here tonight to answer the questions that Bruce is going to propose to us to the best of my ability, and hopefully everyone will get out and vote here during the early voting. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you both. I do have some questions. These have been compiled from various sources, including members of the league. And so let's begin with your most important strategic priorities, what you see as the most important strategic priorities and challenges during your time in office if you are elected to this Ward 2 post. And we'll ask you, Brett, to begin the questioning period with your answer to that question, please.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be challenges and opportunities, and I feel like that I kind of like to look at things more as opportunities than challenges. But I think the opportunity for us in Carrollton is to, continue to monitor the growth that we are going to have. Just our proximity to Atlanta is going to, give us some sustainable growth throughout the next several decades. And, the challenge is going to be to grow at a pace where, we continue to thrive as a community, but not at a pace that we can't sustain and we can't control and we can't service, because expansion is going to always require the city to provide more and more services to more and more people. So as people come here and want to develop property and build subdivisions and that kind of thing, we definitely need that and want that, but we want to do it at a pace that is that works for us as a community. There's a lot of things that I started noticing when I was elected that in my ward there were a lot of recreational facilities, parks, and that kind of thing. And so I recognized that some of our parks were starting to age a little bit and that they needed updating. And so that's why we have started the Lakeshore renovation out at Lake Carroll, probably one of the most beautiful places in our city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Brent, could we have your response to this question, please? Strategic priorities and challenges.
I think the biggest strategic challenge long-term for any municipality is probably going to be aging infrastructure. I think Mr. Ledbetter, noted that a little bit with the expansion of the city, with economic expansion. We're going to have to prioritize and be careful that we don't overexpand and rapidly expand ourselves where we can't take care of existing infrastructure. And so I think those are great points. I think we really need to look at the modernization of the existing infrastructure as things dilapidate and fall apart and need either updating or replacements. As the underground, specifically infrastructure of a city, kind of supports the economic growth and the existing infrastructure of businesses and residences that are there, we need to make sure that we don't get caught in the middle with a massive renovation project, miles and miles of sewer, for instance, that need to be replaced within a short period of time. So I think getting all that on an extended time frame and really have that ironed out of exactly what the long-term goals are for the infrastructure and the utility build out and renovation needs to be. As far as the other challenge with that, I think we need additional and future revenue growth inside the city to perform all those. And so I think we really need to work on empowering entrepreneurs in our city, be a very pro-business city. And I think we do a pretty good job at that, but I think there's some ways we could improve it, making budding entrepreneurs and people that want to start a business, make it really affordable for them. Essentially even maybe start a entrepreneur packet for Carrollton citizens and make all their fees and expenses free for the first 1 to 3 years. I think that would help tremendously.
All right, thank you. This question comes from a resident of Ward 2, and the concern is one that Brett mentioned briefly, the creation of a water park in that area. The person wants to know what factors did the city council consider when they decided to create a water park in the Lake Carroll residential community, interested in your architectural choices and in the cutting down of 60 to 80-year-old trees. So if both of you would comment on this question, please, and we begin with Brent for this one, the Lake Carroll Water Park.
Making sure I'm unmuted there. I think the Lake Carroll Water Park development is a great idea, as far as I'm really a pro-family, pro-public space kind of person. So I think generally speaking, that's a great idea. I mean, I would have preferred if they would have left a lot of the mature trees or parts of them there on the park.
And Brett, your response, please.
Well, first of all, it's calling it a water park. It's not going to be anything like what's over on Alabama Street. There is a rendering of the first phase of the new park out at Lake Carroll over there at the park. And during the first phase, there is going to be some new pavilions built, one large pavilion and several smaller pavilions will be built. There's going to be a playground added to that park. There'll be additional parking, and hence trying to expand the parking capabilities over there was the main reason for the regrading of the park. And we did have to take out some very old pine trees over there in order to accomplish that. I think that when the park is complete and the new landscaping is done, that people will be very happy with the results of doing this renovation. And, unfortunately, a lot of times when there's new development, whether it's a new subdivision or commercial or even a renovation of a park, there is the need to do some additional grading to allow for additional parking to handle water runoff. And that was the case in this location. But I do think that once we are able to get into phase 2, which will be a boardwalk that goes along the shoreline that people will enjoy. There'll be swings and benches and just a lot of amenities over there for everybody to enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you both. This person thinks that Carrollton is in excellent fiscal shape, but wants to know what your opinion is of the management of the city. Brett, you would be first, please. Your opinion of the current management of the city.
Well, Bruce, it's pretty obvious to me, and it became very obvious to me when I was elected, that we have a wonderful city staff that does a great job running the day-to-day operations for our citizens. Our management has done a wonderful job. We're in good financial shape. We plan for the future well. I can't say enough about Tim Grizzard's abilities to handle money. He is excellent at that. Our newest assistant city manager, David Brooks, has come on board and he's hit the ground running. He's learned so much from Tim and some of the other people that are department heads and that kind of thing in the staff. Carrollton's we are blessed to have very, very good management in place in Carrollton. Thank you.
And Brent, your opinion of the management of the city.
I think from a fiscal standpoint, they're doing a great job managing the money from what I can tell from the outside. I'm not on the inside like Mr. Ledbetter is, so I don't have all the specifics on the internal management of the operation. I do think long-term, we're going to be pressured fiscally from an inflationary standpoint, just from global the monetary supply, when they expand it, from a fiscal policy standpoint at the Fed and the national level, I think that's going to trickle into our city government, and the inflationary pressures are going to hit home. I think at some point, with interest rates rising and buying power a little bit weaker than what it used to be, I think it's going to kind of tighten up those budgets quite a bit. It's going to definitely tighten up the average household's budget. And I think we need to be real careful with taxation at that point. If we are seeing inflation even in property values, for instance, and values on real estate are increasing, we need to kind of trim down the millage rates to kind of keep the revenues the same. And so that the tax exposure to the individual is essentially the same and it doesn't go up. The last thing we want to do from a city standpoint is pull more money out of working families if there is an inflationary pressure in the near future. That's the big, fiscal risk that I see the city hitting in the next, decade.
All right, thank you. Police departments have been a subject of controversy in many cities across the country. What would you change about the organization and policies of our police department, if anything? Brent, you would be the first up for this one, please.
I think overall, the police departments do a fantastic job responding to issues of crime and drugs. I think I would like to see a little bit heavier hit against drugs in our area. I think drug use is a big issue. We see it in the medical space a lot with both overdose of prescription drugs, but also illegal drugs. I think with any police force, I think there's a huge risk of constitutional law that we need to make sure that all of our officers are abiding by. I think a lot of times the legal system and the law enforcement get a little casual with certain things. And I think that the Constitution needs to definitely be enforced in our local and state and federal law enforcement agencies.
Okay. And Brett, your opinion?
Well, probably, and I've always considered this to be a good thing. I probably knew less about the police department than I did any other department when I was elected. But what I found out is that the police force, and especially the police chief, Joel Richards, these guys are some of the most caring people in our community. Now, if you're a criminal, you probably don't believe that, or you probably don't think that way. But if you're an average citizen and you need help in our community, the police are always there and they are the first to respond. These guys hold events trying to, continue to connect with the community on a regular basis. They get exceptional training. They have exceptional equipment. We've had trouble with some of our equipment lately, and because of the pandemic, we've had not been able to keep some of our officers with body cameras 24 hours a day, but they're equipped with body cameras that get downloaded when they pull into the facility. There's no monkeying around with that. I just can't say enough good about our police force, and all of the officers that I have met are just top-notch guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Brett, if you also be the first to respond to this question, this person would like to know your position on funding recreation, arts, downtown events, programs.
Okay. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a big advocate. I live right in the downtown corridor. We're a half a mile from the square. My wife and I enjoy going to the AMP for concerts, going to the Cultural Arts Center, attending special events downtown. I'm a huge advocate for recreation. Quality of life is very important to me, and I think that supporting our recreational facilities and our arts in our community is huge. We just had our arts festival this past weekend. My daughter and her children came over from Moreland to attend it. It's a super well attended event. We have just recently started started a grant writer in our city to help us go and search out and do probably the best job that we can possibly do to find monies, state and federal monies for grants and that kind of thing. The city just purchased 278 acres out on the bypass, hoping to create a trail system that would connect Hobbs Farm to Little Tallapoosa Park that's owned by the county. We've applied for a grant jointly with the county to develop that trail system. We plan to build recreational fields on some of that property. It's just, that's what draws people into your community, is when you have things like our arts department and our downtown April Saunders does a wonderful job of events. Thank you.
And Brent?
Perfect, there. So I think overall, I think the, the recreation and the arts world of Carrollton is very robust and strong. I think we have a tremendous amount of things to offer families that come into our area that either live here or visiting here from the local region of West Georgia. I would like to see the specific, some of the parks and recreational facilities become free for a lot of our citizens. I think, some of them don't seem too expensive to a lot of us, but some of us in our citizens, they're on limited funds. And so say a family that may want to use the water park or not the water park, but the pool over by Lake Carroll, it can be several $100s a year for a membership for that facility. And I'd like to make all that stuff free for the citizens of Carrollton. I think, as taxpayers, everybody kind of contributes to the development and the build out of those. And I don't think from a fiscal standpoint, it would really hurt us very much. I think, as Mr. Ledbetter mentioned, fiscally, we're very strong. So I think we could support that kind of thing. The downtown amphitheater, I think, is about $500 to rent. And some of the nonprofits may want to lease that space, and it would be a little bit more affordable for them if it was free. If there was multiple people that wanted to use it on the same day, maybe they could have a lottery. But I do think eliminating a lot of the fee burden off of the general population for utilization of any of those facilities, it should be a priority.
Okay. This next question is a finance question. This person remarks that Carrollton the city has almost no debt, wants to know your philosophy about municipal debt as a means of paying for projects. And in connection with that, what sort of future capital outlay projects would you envision? Brent, if you'd respond first.
So I think overall, I think we're fiscally, we're in good shape with minimal debts. And I would keep it that way. I think if you get overloaded with a huge debt burden from a municipality, it could be dangerous, especially if you get into an economic downturn or an inflationary cycle. So I think it's a good thing to minimize debt at the municipal level. I think long-term capital outlay projects that kind of benefit the city at large. So, like a sewer treatment facility, if we had to add one of those to the city, I think something like that, that's a structural component of the city, would be important to potentially finance over the life of that, piece of equipment, essentially. So if you have a sewer treatment plant that's going to function for 50 years, it makes sense to maybe finance it for 30 or 40 years via a bond or a loan, to free up, day-to-day operational capital.
And Brett?
I think Dr. Harris and I are in agreement about, not running up a lot of unnecessary debt. I think that there are going to come times when we're going to need to borrow some of the money to do some of the capital projects that we need to do as a city in order to keep our infrastructure in good shape and that kind of thing. But overall, I'm a proponent of staying as lean as you can from a debt perspective, but I'm not opposed if we need to borrow money to do a certain capital project. With interest rates what they are right now, the city just did a $10 million loan in order to build a new water holding area right next to the water treatment plant. And we were able to borrow that money at 0.13% because we are a designated water first community, which says a lot for the people that work in that department to have achieved such a high standard out there to get a rating like that, I mean, that's practically free money. And when you can borrow money for less than 1% to do a capital project like that, I think that's a good use of borrowing money. Thank you.
Here is a question that's been a subject of discussion over the past couple of years. And Brett will ask you to respond first to the question of what should be done with the Carver High School building.
Well, the city does not own the Carver High School building. Dr. Harris owns the Carver High School building. So I think that's Dr. Harris's decision, not the city of Carrollton's.
Okay. And Brent, what is your?
I think we've tossed the idea around of what exactly to do with that facility. Initially, we were planning on building out the high complexity molecular lab for COVID diagnostics over there. That didn't turn out to work. But currently it's zoned for multifamily residential. And I think it'd be a travesty to, to change the total structure. I think the physical structures are in great shape. They're brick and CMU or concrete block construction. They have a solid roof on them. So structurally, they're good buildings. We think we're probably going to use the bottom buildings nearest the water park for the school, for like a little area where kids can do plays and things like that in, because it has a little an elevated area inside. And then the main school buildings, we are thinking about building them out into loft apartments. I think with the affordable housing shortage in the area, I think apartments or loft conversion for that building would really benefit the area. It'd kind of renovate and reclaim that structure for some function and use. Right now there's been a lot of vandalism to that particular structure with the outside AC systems and, some graffiti. So it'd be nice to get a functional use for those set of buildings over there.
All right, thank you. This questioner wants to know what you propose to do to attract and retain competent city employees. Let's see, Brent, you would be the first one up for this one, please.
So I think as the labor market is definitely tightening across the country, we're definitely going to have to look at how our enticement and labor rates for positions compared to both the private sector and other municipals, organizations across the region. I think that the best thing we can do from a city to attract high quality individuals for those positions is to have a great city for people, that want to come and bring their families here. So if we have a robust park system and public space system, the green belt's a very big attractant. And then, all the downtown activities, the liberal arts downtown, the eateries. So we just want to be a pro business and pro entertainment, pro family atmosphere in the city. And if we do that, we will attract those high quality candidates that want to move here and become part of the economy.
All right, and Brett, would you respond, please?
Yes. I think it was about a year ago, we changed the retirement structure in the city for our employees to give them more opportunity to invest in their own retirement and somewhat of a matching. If they would invest more into their retirement, the city would put more back for them. And that was in an effort to hold on to some of our key employees that had opportunities to leave and go elsewhere. We're paying top pay in our local area, for law enforcement and firemen and, critical employees, critical jobs that we have to maintain. but it's getting harder and harder to keep good people. And, I think I'll have to agree again with Dr. Harris that just providing a great place for people to work and a great place to live is paramount about keeping people here.
You are muted, Dr. Lyon.
Thank you, Gila. What should the role of the city be in the development of housing? Brett, you would be first for this one.
Okay. The city's role in housing is something that comes up a good little bit. I think the thing that we can do to best help with housing is to make it easy to get a permit, to make it easier to, go through the process, to be as helpful as we can. There's some areas of the city that we're going to have to try to be involved in a little bit more to encourage developers to work into those areas. It's a question that's come up a lot. There's not a lot of good, clear answers to how the city can become involved, because the city's not in the residential development business. Developers do that. And, so if we can get developers that are interested in some of the areas around the city that have shown the least amount of growth, the city could work with them on infrastructure, work with them on impact fees and that kind of thing to encourage more development in some of those areas. Thank you.
And Brent, please.
Yes, sir. So I think like everything else in economics, I think we have, supply demand curves that kind of push development, and specifically for housing and affordable housing, we need to make sure that the development challenges for developers, they're not getting hit with big expensive bills to do development. I think that's one of the big deterrents for why people don't do certain developments. I mean, we could talk about the Carver building, for instance. I mean, if we convert that main, school building into lofts, I'm not sure of the exact cost, but I think it's somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 impact fee per room that gets developed. So if you take a building that's already existing and you chop it up into, 20, apartment units, then, you're doing 20 times 5,000 or 20 times 3,000. I mean, it's somewhere between $60,000 to $100,000. And that's just the development, essentially water and sewer fee for that structure. I think the residential development tap fees for sewer and water are somewhere between $500 to $7,500. I'm not sure the exact number, but I think if we really wanted to push, and that money just gets put right into the final product, so instead of $100,000 house, if it was free, it'd be a $107,000 house essentially. So, and $5,000 or $10,000 doesn't sound like much, but if you're doing 100 houses, $5,000 makes a big difference. And it may be something where we talk about utility expansion and help developers put in the underground utilities for their subdivisions, or give them some kind of tax incentive or break on the expense of doing that. I think would promote more affordable housing to be developed.
You already have commented on this, both of you, but beyond housing, are there other areas, other challenges that make it difficult to attract new business and industry, and how might you address those for things beyond the housing area? And Brent, is there anything more you'd like to say about that?
I think to attract entrepreneurs in the area, or at least entice even our own citizens to become entrepreneurs and start businesses. I mean, if that's the question of how to expand and grow business in the area, we need to make it really affordable and simple for them to do that. So I think even at the city level, we can start with how to start a business, little packet or brochure at the city, and walk people through the specific steps. Okay, you need to find a location. Is it going to be a home business or a commercial site business? Are you going to lease a property? And then, apply for a business license. What do you need for all that? And I know all the information is there, but it'd be nice to kind of compile it into a nice, easy to read and understand for that budding entrepreneur, maybe that kid straight out of high school that wants to start, a home-based landscape business, for example. And so he can pick up that packet, read through it, and within a couple of days have his business up and operating. Along those lines, I think if we gave people either tax credits or benefits on the first couple of years, or even totally eliminated things like the equipment and inventory tax for Carrollton. I don't know from a legal standpoint if that's possible, but I know it sure would make operating businesses in Carrollton a whole lot easier if you didn't have to worry about counting how many computers you have in your operation, how much inventory you have, and then pay taxes on that.
And Brett, your response, please.
Well, I think the city currently is very proactive as far as attracting business. Our local chamber just got a new director, and I understand she's hit the ground running, Karen Handel, and we work closely with them. But the city of Carrollton has, their doors are open for business. There is no doubt in my mind that we're willing to work with people from an infrastructure standpoint. We're willing to work with them from a tax standpoint in order to attract the new business into our area. So the city of Carrollton has a really positive attitude about attracting business to our community.
Okay. With only two of you this evening for this forum, we've gone through our questions fairly rapidly. And we are now at the point where we're ready for your closing statements. So, Brett, you would be the first to give your closing statement, please.
Well, I hope that tonight's forum has given many of you that may be undecided about who you're going to vote for some clarity. I hope that you'll get out to the polls. The early voting has started. I think that runs through October the 29th. And of course, election day is November the 2nd. I hope you'll, recognize that I have a sensible method of local government, and I feel like that I've done a good job the last 2 years. I would like the opportunity to serve a full term of 4 years, and I hope you'll get out and vote for me, Brett Ledbetter, during early voting and on November the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brent, your statement, please.
Thanks for having me on this forum tonight, and the city of Carrollton, I really appreciate it. Tuning in and listening. I think, I bring a couple unique things to the table as a physician with healthcare. I think
I'm afraid, at least on my screen, Brent has frozen up.
Can you hear me still, or?
We can hear now. I can hear you. I can't see you, but we can hear you.
You want me to keep going just with audio?
I think so. In fact, you can back up because we stopped hearing you about 30 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say I have a couple additional things I mean, I think overall the operation of the city of Carrollton has been excellent and doing very well. I think I would just bring another opinion to the table. I think with in the future, I think we're going to have larger and larger healthcare expenditures, especially from an employment standpoint. And so I think I could potentially look into that budgeting item on the city of Carrollton, help get that trimmed up a little bit. I think from Carrollton's standpoint, overall, we have a fantastic city. I'd like to see the entire city really tuned and tip-top condition before we added on any additional large expenditure, large financial projects. One of the things I would like to see done also is ordinance kind of overhaul, eliminating any kind of vague ordinances. I think that would be very beneficial to the citizens of Carrollton. From a federal, state, and local level, at least we can work on the local level, just trim and simplify some of the ordinances up a little bit. I think the other thing is empowering entrepreneurs. I talked to a little bit, and always stay family focused with every decision or most of the decisions we make in the city of Carrollton. And the last thing is just an open and active feedback on the city council. I would like to see citizen comments section, like actual responses written down and either published somewhere. I think that would be beneficial for the citizens. Thank you.
Good. Okay. I'm glad we were able to get in the final part of your closing statement. And I thank both candidates for some good responses to these questions tonight. And we've covered a lot of territory. I appreciate, as always, my colleagues in the League of Women Voters for all the work they did to bring this forum together. And I think at this point we are adjourned. So thank you again.
And thank you very much. Appreciate y'all doing this.
You bet.